Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Practical Show Tech episode. Today, we're all excited to be talking about Clear-Com Arcadia, and this is one of those topics that honestly I've been looking forward to for quite a number of weeks, if not months, to chat about. I know our audience, Mac and Pete, comms is something we all have a passion for, no doubt about it. And it's I think part of that is because it's such a crucial component of every single thing we do in our industry. Even a pure music concert still has communications, and those communication needs have only expanded over the years. And making this a part of embracing this component of our industry, I think, is also really important as opportunities for folks when you're looking at diversifying. What am I doing for a living? The pandemic really brought this to the forefront when everybody was completely remote and everybody was logging in with all kinds of technologies, obviously Agent IC and the various Clear-Com components that really facilitated staying on the air during that time. So, the number of wireless that we're looking at today on shows, we've talked about this on numerous episodes, that that head count's only going up, and the number probably won't be going down anytime soon. Everybody who works on the production that has a cellular phone is used to being connected, right? Whether they were connecting remotely using Agent IC or whether they were just on the conference calls. When they come to an event site now, I think there's almost an assumption that they're still in that conversation loop. And obviously free speak with the 1.9 system was one of the premier systems we saw. So let's go back. Let's put our Wayback Machine as on. We'll put it on a slow speed, but let's warp back to DX200 2.4 gig, right? Go back BTR days, right? We were very much in a world of constraints. Here's a base station, here's 4 channels on a BTR. DX200 comes out, says, hey, I can give you a few more positions there. And oh, by the way, I'm going to go into a band that's hopefully a little easier for you to deal with. That'll be a little more open, that we're not competing for microphones, IEMs. And then, here comes Free Speak. And obviously there's other products in there in between. But when we kind of merged into the 1.9, if you said 1.9 gig, you were immediately drawn to a Free Speak system. That was kind of your top of mind. And we started working in a scaled up system. We were like, whoa, 25 belt packs on a system. And remember with the day when we were like, well, when are we going to need 25 belt packs? I'm not talking about, larger broadcasts, but just, the average day. And then, Mac, how many times did you all of a sudden like, all right, I need more. I need one more, two more.
25 felt like a lot back then. Now every show has 40.
Right. Yeah, we just walk in and it's like, hey, can we just set the system to maximum? Now, if you ask somebody, well, okay, can I get some more rental money for that belt pack? That may be a different conversation, but I still want 40. So Free Speak started really giving us, we got really, really spoiled with battery life. All of a sudden now we weren't changing AA's out, oh my goodness. Yeah. Every 6 hours, a new batch of batteries. And I bring a lot of this up because we take for granted I think a lot of times where we're at today. We just go, oh, I want this, I want that. And we sometimes need to back up and go, hey, how did we get here? And Arcadia really is that product that's a culmination of bringing all this together of HelixNet. You know, again, from an IP belt pack standpoint, you know, we started out with, we'll do XLR, but hey, by the way, over here I can do both things. I can keep you in a world that maybe you were used to, which was XLR cable, but IP, I'm going to give you that option as well. And now scaling becomes very practical, except that I'm ordering more network switches on a show now than I ever have, right? But anyhow, I'm going to stop there for a second because I could relive the past pretty well in that sense. But let's do some introductions real quick. We're joined today by Kari Eythorsson from Clear-Com. He's the product manager for the Arcadia product. Kari's been just such a great advocate for our marketplace over the years. It's one of the things that Clear-Com, we love working with manufacturers and talking to manufacturers that keep their ear to the market. And throughout the years, Kari's just been a great advocate for our industry, our market segment, I should say. And you know, just great to work with. He's joined by Arnold Chau today, who's the engineering manager, and I'm sure has spent many hours on this particular product and working out all the features that we folk that use it always want. Never satisfied. Speaking of never satisfied with features, Pete, you would be leading our march there, right? That's always. You know, what are your thoughts as somebody who's obviously seen a lot of different systems evolutions?
Well, I have done shows in the past with a lot of belt packs, but it's been a stretch. I did a show, a documentary on the Stones where I had 35 BTR systems, but I only allowed one belt pack per BTR system. It was 35 separate camera operators, and each BTR system had 4 belt packs on the same channel. So I was able to squeeze them in there. But the most amazing response to FreeSpeak came from camera people. They came back and they every single one of them said, "I cannot believe how good this sounds. I've been stuck on the headset on my camera, which I guess doesn't sound very good," and they all just loved it. So that was the main thing people did, and everybody responds to the quality it is. And I know that when on the standalone FreeSpeak, I shoehorned 10 different channels into it by converting the 2-wire to 4-wire and using the program SAN as a 4-wire and making a special adapter cable for the headset to get another 4-wire in. So the Arcadia, with its immense I/O capability, is a real pleasure. I can't wait to learn about it. So we're going to allow lots of questions during this thing. So Mac wants to maybe fill us in on how to do those questions and when we're going to present them.
Well, hopefully it's clear in your GoToWebinar control panel that there is a tab called Questions. Ask your questions in there, and we will see them. I don't actually know if you'll see other people's questions.
No,
I've not looked at this from the viewpoint of an attendee, but we will see the questions. We will try to answer them timely, like soon after you ask them, but please be clear, because it may not be possible to answer it in a timely manner. And if we're answering it 5 minutes or 10 minutes later, it may be hard to tell the context you were asking the question in. So please be clear about the context and ask your questions, but please ask questions, because that's really what this learning experience is about, is addressing your needs and the things that you need to understand and making sure it's clear to you. So ask your questions, and hopefully we'll get to everyone, but all of this will be available after the about 24 hours after the presentation.
Yeah, there is a handouts pull down on your screen, which is the PowerPoint that Kari is going to be using, and there will also be some links available in there as well, and those will be available along with the video, which will be available about 24 hours later on our website. So I did want to also mention that we'll try to, when we get into the actual demonstration of the programming, sometimes it's a little hard to see on your screen what's being done, but your attendee screens have a zoom capability, so you can zoom into one corner of the screen and see an amplification of what's going on. We won't be zooming in necessarily all the time ourselves. So with all that being said, Kari, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here. So I thoroughly enjoyed Kelly's not history lesson. That's not, but it's kind of interesting if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, like where we've come as an industry in a fairly short period of time. I was fortunate enough to join this industry, back in the late 1990s, when like a lot of it was starting to happen. And there is a fantastic article that was written by John Huntington about kind of the evolution and maturity, how live performance equipment reached its maturity. And it basically just shows like different disciplinaries. It's missing intercom though, so if anybody has John on their speed dial, then he could add that. But it basically has, timelines for the development of anything from, basic processing, from, the first digital console that became kind of viable in the market, like the PM1D back in the 1999 or whenever that was approximately.
I think John got the message because he's attending this webinar.
Okay, excellent. I actually own this on a slide somewhere where I, when I'm not in a public presentation, where I like to show that to people as like, see where we've come in a short period of time. And okay, so if we take the PM1D as a milestone that I think we can all agree on is like a big thing. After that, going through the early 2000s, there's a lot of development. And kind of at the tail end of that, we start to, go from a world where an intercom, where you have two choices for intercom. So it's basically our, favorite two-wire party line systems, be that with a SAP panel or whatever you need to make that work for your application. Or you need something that's kind of really designed to be installed, a matrix system, which inherently was probably originally designed for a television station back in the day, right? It requires a lot of effort to, get up and going, because back in the beginning of time, it was probably just intended to be installed like at the, let's say, the BBC or APC or whatnot. So at the tail end of this, early 2000s development, we start to see some new things. And in case of Clear-Com, what we bring to the market back then, around 2010, I think, was the first time when it was shown, was the HelixNet system. So basically a system that's fairly, it works on existing infrastructure, meaning your 3-pin XLR cables, everything is available everywhere. It's all digital without hums and buses and things like that. It kind of got a life on its own. It went to become something I don't think anybody ever imagined. So with all the things that we developed on top of it in the following, years, being able to have multiple stations connected on IP or XLR, and having additional interfacing, the LQ integration and so on. It was a relatively quick and easy system to deploy, which you could deploy in the morning of a show with not so much preparation. And it could be deployed by somebody who was also doing 17 other things, right? You need to be the psychotherapist for your talent, right? Or you need to make sure you have clear frequencies for your microphones and your IFBs, and intercom is somewhere on the list while you're also mixing the show and trying to eat a sandwich. So HelixNet basically built its own kind of, I want to call its own basically bracket of, it was its own, in its own league, really. And then, a couple of years later, it was joined by FreeSpeak 2. And so these two things, they, I think, really did many good things for this, can I call it a hit and run event production business? Because before that, you needed a lot of prep to make your 32 or 35 BTRs work, right? It wasn't something you just pulled out of your hat. So basically, Arcadia is then pulling all of that together. Everything, all these concepts of being able to do combat audio is, you just need to make it work today. Pulling the wired and the wireless systems together, and then adding what historically we were never big on in the intercom world, which is interfacing, which you guys mentioned earlier. Historically, the two-wire system was somewhat of an island. If you just think about your traditional theater system, it really didn't need to connect to many things. There was perhaps a program audio on the stage announce, and that was kind of just it. But what we've definitely seen as people have started to embrace, and starting to, grasp, hey, what's a 4-wire, right? Now you can basically make anything that's audio in your world a part of your communication system. This could be as simple as being able to talk to the in-ear system of the band, or even being able to take a pre-fade listen microphone from the person that counts in the songs and feed that to your director so that they can listen to as he counts into the song. So all of these things. So Arcadia, and this is what I think is the most excited about it, is that it's pulling all of these things together, but still with the aim of making it easy to use. So, I'm focused on the person that's doing multiple things, the juggler really, and but still giving them a lot of capabilities, because today's productions have gotten to be more and more sophisticated. We're expecting more. There's more complicated kit that needs to be handled and coordinated. But having said that, Arcadia, basically, you can all see my screen. Pete, can you nod?
Yep, it looks good.
So Arcadia basically joins together our FreeSpeak wireless intercom system, our HelixNet wired intercom, as well as being able to power a reasonably sized two-wire system, just a classic analog party line system. In addition to that, it can interface to various other systems via Dante, or the Dante variety of AS67, 4-wire, 2-wire, and of course GPIO. Arcadia has gone now through 2 major releases. So the original introduction, basically Arcadia was a larger wireless base station. It could do up to 16 IP transceivers, which previously had been exclusive to our Eclipse matrix systems, joined with a 64-port Dante Brooklyn module. Last summer, the end of last summer, we then added HelixNet into the system. So to have this combined, basically digital wired system all in one device. This is roughly where the Arcadia fits within our product offerings. So we still sell the FreeSpeak 2 Base 2 base station, the unit that everybody knows how to use. It's still doing excellently for us, and we definitely see it as a highly successful product. Above that is then the FreeSpeak Edge base station. So the FreeSpeak Edge base station is slightly different than the FreeSpeak 2 base in that it can do IP transceivers up to 6, and as well as 8 Dante interface ports on 16 belt packs. That is the FreeSpeak Edge base. The Arcadia Central Station then can go way beyond that in belt pack counts and in interface counts, in addition to have the capability of also running a wired system from it. So it kind of slots right below our Eclipse matrix system range. This is perhaps a little bit redundant, but this could also look like this. So basically where you can see the row where we have HelixNet FreeSpeak, basically the Arcadia is the combined, that system basically combined with the additional interfacing. Then if we take a look at the unit, this is the front panel of the unit. It has, it is somewhat reminiscent intentionally of our FreeSpeak and HelixNet main and base stations. So it actually features a user station. So meaning you can plug in your headset or a gooseneck microphone into the Arcadia, and you can use it as a 4-channel intercom user station. So with that, it has a speaker, and it features these 2 touch screens that are used, as you can see on this image, the 4 key sets, so 4 channels or directs that can be added to that, each with a level control, call signal, and the talk button. You can then enter a menu mode where you can do some basic housekeeping things for the unit. That includes setting up IP addresses, getting the default password for the CCM, the browser interface that we use to control and configure the Arcadia, and some other basic things like that. We do not have as many things that you can tweak on the front panel of Arcadia as we do on the FreeSpeak 2 Base 2, mainly because once a system gets as big as an Arcadia can become today, it becomes, you really need to use the CCM really to do that very effectively. So we kind of just have the basics there. Underneath the left-hand size display, you can see it right there. There is we call it the hamburger icon in the middle of between the 2 key sets. If you tap that, it gives you things like remote mic kills and all calls and stage announce, similarly to what you have been what we had the physical buttons for in the past. And then on the right-hand display, you can see that there's a dedicated reply key between the two key sets. That will then light up if a FreeSpeak belt pack does a direct call to your station. Now for the most interesting part, at least in my opinion, the most interesting part is always the rear panel. So if we walk through that from probably right to left, on the right-hand side, we have four network interfaces. So two RJ45s and two SFP cages. We will go through it in the CCM what you can do here, but effectively you can assign different functionality or different portions of the systems to the different network interfaces. So as an example, so LAN 1 as a default from the factory, that's the management, that's the CCM for the system, and actually today HelixNet as well. Then let's say Dante primary and secondary could be assigned to LAN 3 and 4 as an example. But we'll show you the configuration of that in a moment. Then the next bit where you can see that we have kind of a cluster of 4 RJ45s and 2 SFP cages. This is basically the FreeSpeak 2 section of the unit. So with this connectivity, you can connect to FreeSpeak 2 E1 transceivers. So this is your directly connected original FreeSpeak 2 transceiver or a splitter. So this section of the unit should look very similar to what we have on the back of a FreeSpeak 2 base 2. So it basically allows you to connect 2 splitters, each with 5 transceivers for a total of 10 E1 connected transceivers. Then we have the very excited about this, the 8 4-wire ports. So we previously had 4, and you just heard about all the exercises that Pete needed to go through in order to get more. Now we have 8 transformer balanced, transformer isolated 4-wire ports on the back of the unit. Port number 8 is it has a special function. It is configured in the system as a split port, and the unit comes with a breakout cable to be able to use it as a program audio or a stage announce. But it can otherwise be used as a plain 4-wire, just like we could do with program audio and stage announce on the FreeSpeak 2 base 2. These ports have the same functionality that we've had in previous products, being able to switch pin outs and so on.
Question came up. How many TVCRs can be connected to the base?
Okay, so we can do 10 E1 transceivers, and we can do up to 16 IP transceivers. All of that works concurrently. However, there is a limitation to how that can practically be used, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But physically, 16 IP, 10 E1. So following the 4-wire, we have the 4 2-wire ports. So just like in the FreeSpeak 2 base 2, these are switchable Clear-Com or RTS-TW style. They are switchable per pair, so that your A and B could be combined for 2 channels on a single 3-pin XLR to either an RTS-TW system or a Clear-Com RS703 belt pack. So yeah, you switch that separately for A and B and C and D. And then in addition to that, this unit has a bigger power supply than the FreeSpeak 2 base 2 behind the 2 wires. So in the Arcadia, we have 560 milliamps on each pair. So for the unit itself, we can roughly do a little bit more than 1 amp of 2-wire power out of the unit total. between all the four connections that you have here. We then have some GPIOs. So there are 2 GPIs and 2 relays output that can be configured in the logic module of the CCM that we'll show you in a bit.
How many belt packs, let's say Clear-Com single channel belt packs, can those outputs power?
So a single channel Clear-Com belt pack is relatively lightweight in power. And so if I happen to have my Rubik cube open, so it does like 30 milliamps pair. So something in the neighborhood of, let's say 15. So that would be pair. So if you would have 15 belt packs, let's call it 14, just to round it, then on A plus B, you could do 15 and another 15 on C plus D. We do have a calculator for this. And so if somebody wants to play around with those numbers, the link is in the presentation. Then there is a calculator that looks it's not liking me anymore. Hold on.
While you're digging that out, David Layton wanted to know if the 2-wire ports could be configured at SA program, and I think he missed the fact that port number 8 of the 4-wire ports is SA programming.
Yeah. Yes. You see my Excel sheet that I have right here?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so this is available on our website. So here we can basically we can state that we have 1 Arcadia. So that's conservatively calculating that we have 1 amp of power. I can actually go here and I can change my headroom of the system. Right now it's at something we call normal. And then we can basically, enter something like, what did I say, 14. So let's do 28 because we're not doing it for a system, and you can see a calculation of like where we are, both the power budget and how much the user stations draw, either idle, which is, definitely not something to aim for, but also at the full power. So you can see that in the gray column right here. So this is a tool if you guys are dealing with 2-wire systems, then this can be found on our website. It has all of our current power supplies. It has the FreeSpeak 2 base 2. You can select per device or per pair, because that's perhaps more, a little bit more useful when you're trying to plan out your system. So when I go per pair, it goes down to half an amp. And now you can see if I was trying to do all of these to 28 belt packs on a single pair, we would have insufficient power. There is more here. There's actually, this is current 2-wire product. There's actually something called the legacy party line estimator that has things back to the Jurassic era. I don't know if anybody on this call remembers something like the SB8, but we even have that on here. But going back to the slides. So I talked about GPIO. We then have an internal AC power supply. In addition to that, the Arcadia comes with a power supply brick that can be connected to the DC power input for redundant power inputs into the unit. So the next thing to talk about is capacity. So this question was asked earlier, but how many transceivers can we do and so on. So like you can see here, 10 E1 transceivers. The system really doesn't care if those are 1.9 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz. It just like with the FreeSpeak 2 base 2, it just it just sorts itself out. The unit really has no concept of how the audio is coming over its frequency. IP transceiver 16, so that can be either the 1.9 gigahertz IPT, free speak 2 IPT transceiver, or the 5 gigahertz free speak edge transceiver. So with this unit, you could really, if you wanted to, you could run all connectivity methods and frequencies in the free speak family together on one system. We then have the ability currently to do 40 free speak bell packs that can be 1.9, 2.4, or 5 gigahertz. We can then do up to 24 HelixNet enabled channels. So HelixNet, unlike the free speak, HelixNet is defined as a channel-based system. So you basically enable a channel, and then multiple free speak user stations can access that channel. I have more details on how that works, but if you think about it, when you're enabling a channel to be HelixNet, it's very similar to just dropping a two-wire interface into it. That's the concept. We then can do the 64 Dante ports, and as I showed on the back of the unit, we have 8 4-wires and 4 2-wires. Now, a portion of this is then sold as licensed capacity. So the unit, basically, when you buy a unit, you buy it with a certain amount of capacity that we call licensed ports. What counts as a licensed port, what counts as a licensed port is basically a free speak belt pack, so a free speak user, a HelixNet channel, so that's not a belt pack. Multiple belt packs can use a single HelixNet channel, and then a Dante port. Those 3 things are how we count up the capacity, the license capacity of the system. So with the licensed ports, we can basically enable systems to be sold for different requirements. Today we have, like we have in this previous slide, we have variations that start at 16 licensed ports and go all the way up to 128 licensed ports. A 16-port unit, as an example, could be used for 8 free speak 2 bell packs and 4 HelixNet channels that are accessed by way more HelixNet bell packs, and 4 Dantes as an interface to whatever is needed to be interfaced to.
So the licensing isn't related to how many bell packs, how many HelixNet, how many Dante. It's just a number, and you can pull from that number how many you want. So you could have, if you have a 16 licensed port, you could put 8 bell packs and 8 Dante connections.
Yes, or the following day you could do all of them as wireless bell packs. That's
not something. It's not something you have to program in. When you get to 16, that's all it works.
Correct. You can add like fencing around it. So if you want to make sure that you're not consuming ports unnecessarily, then you can declare them to be a specific item. But that's up to you, the person that's configuring the system.
And if you bought let's say a 16 license port system, and then wanted to expand it to 128, would the price be more or less than initially buying a 128?
It's slightly more. I mean, there's a little bit more of an overhead with it, but it's not. Apart from the first step, those things are generally not that much out of sync.
And that licensing is just a code that's typed in. It's not that's related to the serial number of that device, right?
So the way that we do licensing the infrastructure is that if you order, let's say you order a bundle of 16 additional license ports for your Arcadia 32, then you would get back a code from Clear-Com that you can then apply to your unit. And this is done, this is done by putting the unit on a network that's internet accessible, just like your computer. There's nothing fancy that needs to happen there. You type in the code, and basically the unit pulls the license of this license ticket that we deliver onto the unit, and now it's on the unit. So no, you don't need to send us a serial number, and we issue a code for that serial number.
Can a license be transferred between hardware if you have two different Arcadias? So you buy it for that, and once it's on there, it's on there.
It's on there, correct.
Going back just a little bit, the DECT synchronization.
Yes.
Can it be synchronized to other DECT systems?
So,
like Riedel or somebody like that?
So two different things. So these DECT sync ports that we have there, they are used to synchronize our E1 module. So let's say you have another system in the vicinity, co-located, however that may be. Then basically, if you can get a sync out of the previous unit, the unit that you're co-located with, then you would plug it back in there, and now those two systems, they're not sharing any audio or anything like that. They're just sharing the beat. And what that beat means is that now all of these systems under transceivers, they start to transmit. They start their DECT frame at the same time. And this is mostly important for spectral capacity. Because if you have them, all starting, like one starts here and the next one starts a couple of bits later, then it's like, imagine if you have a bucket of rocks, right? And then you have another bucket with the equivalent amount of sand. So like the bucket of rocks is going to fill up much quicker. But once you have this finer granularity of having everything beating to the same beat, then now you can fit more, because this system is trying to transmit on this slot, but it's the next system that's trying to make use of the slot following it. It's overlapping into that, and so on. But then you're in the rock situation. While if everything is precisely aligned, then it's the sun situation. You can fit.
So if I had a PTP clock that this is not the same thing, correct? So if I had a network PTP.
Yeah.
Right.
So the DECT sync is basically a special type of a pulse that's defined in the DECT standard. It's every 10 milliseconds, there is a really sharp peak. And I can't remember if it is every 8th or 16th, there is like a bigger one that, indicates some sort of a master frame or like a master flag. Not very interesting. But,
no, so bottom line is third-party systems would need to make available their equivalent, like you have here, of the DECT sync of that signal, for a lack of a better term, right?
Yeah.
So this is not
a standardized sync in the DECT specification.
Yeah. No, this kind of DECT sync is, I believe, standardized from memory. I don't want to put my head too far over the ledge on that one, but if memory serves me, it is standardized. It's not very commonly used though. So that's a different thing. Now, okay, then let's go into the IP world. Now we're dealing with IP, and we use PTP version 2 like many others. We then derive the sync in the transceivers from the PTP. And, we have a certain mechanism how to do that. Other people may have a different mechanism of how to do that. I don't think there is a standard on how to build a DECT clock out of PTP.
But if they were syncing to PTP-v2 as well, then they probably would be synchronized.
I don't think so, because you know, because basically there's like, imagine you get a PTP clock, there's an absolute time. Everything is good. Everything has gotten balanced and is in a good shape. And then that signal, there's a gearbox basically that takes that and builds this DECT sync signal for over-the-air synchronization. And that could be different between manufacturers. I would probably be surprised if it was totally the same everywhere.
There were a couple other questions that related to the 2-wire. Is the power capacity this split among the 4 outputs the same, or if I put all my bell packs on one output, can it use all the power?
It cannot pool the entire 1.12 amps, no.
Right,
so
okay.
it's pooled on AB and CD.
And then lastly, remaining from back in the SA program questions, is there a way to use a different 4-wire port as your SA program instead of number 8?
Yeah, so this could be an interesting thing as a conversation, actually. So in reality, any Dante port or any 4-wire could be used as an SA.
But the analog 4-wire ports won't show up as SA and program except for number 8.
Correct. So we have them hard-coded in the system with that name, but there is really nothing to stop, you know, if that's suitable for the application, there's nothing to stop you from taking a Dante port and using it as your SA, tying it to a channel or whatever you want to do with it.
So before we move on from ports for 1 second, just to clarify, because I saw another question that came in, and it's always the port thing's always a question, right? Because this is one of those, which is awesome because we've got so many opportunities here. To clarify on ports, number one, once you have your port allocation, like you said, any show that can be reconfigured. So if you have 16 free speaks one show with no HelixNet packs at all, and you don't need those groups, you can use your 16, or if you have a 32 port, right, that multiplier. But then the next show, if you only have 8 free speaks, but you need 6 HelixNet groups, then PLs, now that goes together into that allocation. So I think that's always the challenge everybody get in our heads. Number one, this back panel, none of the hard inputs, meaning the 2-wire and 4-wire, actually count against our overall port count. So that's the number one thing to understand, correct?
Yes.
Right. So then when we move into this, every wireless pack is an endpoint and is considered a port. So you can start there. And then number 2, for my HelixNet enabled channels, it's not the number of HelixNet packs that I have on the system. It is the number of channels I set up. So production, lights, audio, video, cameras, those are actually what count as ports, correct?
Exactly.
Excellent.
So it's almost like you bought a system already.
There you go. I've attended a couple of your webinars. So, you know, that's just always something for people, because we think endpoints.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's a combination. So in this system, we want to think of it as, if it's wireless and it's an endpoint, it is a port. If it's wired HelixNet product, then it's about the number of channels, not the number of endpoints.
Yeah, so HelixNet is it's a distributed mixing system, really. very similar to you know, a two-wire system. A two-wire system, the high impedance bridge is basically like the two-wire is a mix bus, and you're basically bridging it at very high impedance, and now you have an input and output of your mix bus. HelixNet was designed to mimic that. So when you're adding a HelixNet belt pack to a system, you're actually adding mixing capability to your system. And that port you're enabling to it, enabling a channel, you know, how we describe it, is basically just sending everybody that relative audio, that channel, that's then mixed in all of those HelixNet endpoints.
Now,
So, and that gives a lot of elasticity, because you can, like, you know, you may be, you know, you may have a budget crunch or whatever. So you may have that conversation with your production. Okay, you want more, you know, wireless belt packs. Well, that takes you to a more expensive Arcadia, because the Arcadia is doing that part for the wireless system. But I can string you out some extra HelixNet belt packs, no problem, because the system can accept many of those for, you know, just one license port, if you even wanted it that way.
can a license be returned? Let's say I wanted to license another 64 ports for one show, and then
Not transferable.
Okay, and secondly, if the hardware is capability of 128 ports, why does it cost more to upgrade than buying the unit at full capacity to start with? Is that just the overhead of making a license? Or?
It's basically, yeah, it's an overhead thing. You know, when we're bundling it together, when we build a unit, we build it with a certain amount of, we license it to whatever you're ordering.
Right. Oh, okay. And then,
so, yeah.
This is an interesting question. If you have an HRM4X master station, can that be interfaced on the HelixNet ports?
No.
So that could only be interfaced via the 4-wire connection.
Correct.
Right.
And that's how you would get your power line, though, if you want to use packs with power line. So for instance, say I have a bunch of spots, right? And I need to use more conventional methods to get to it, like an XLR cable. I could take my existing HelixNet master station and use its power line to, and then connect via either 2-wire or 4-wire to that, correct?
Yeah. So yes, so if we go into the power line world, so yes, Arcadia does not have power lines built in. And sadly, I think we've pretty much built the last HMS4X there is. We do not anticipate that there's a world without power lines in the future. So you watch this space on how that will interact with your Arcadia in the near future. So we definitely have some things to talk about on that in the coming months.
But for now, we can use our 4-wire or our 2-wire ports to interface to existing hardware and take advantage of power line in that way.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Okay. So, you know, it's of course critical that you have the right Arcadia for the unappropriately licensed Arcadia for your project, right? And you know, I definitely see an instance where I could second guess myself or whatever. And we do have a tool on our website, which basically just allows you to do a quick check on your, you know, what you need for your system. So basically just enter the number of belt packs you need, enter how many Dante IOs you need, how many HelixNet channels, and it reminds you, hey, it's not HelixNet endpoints, it's channels, and then it will tell you what is the minimum Arcadia system that you need for your application. You have something, Pete?
There was, yeah, one question, actually 2 questions, all related to power line. Ivan suggests, he says, HelixNet question, is it possible to use XLR to use or IP only? And the answer, of course, is it's IP only with the Arcadia,
Yes.
unless 4-wire connect a legacy HelixNet base station to get your power line.
Correct. So that's it.
Yeah, there was one about using the IP ports to tie into the Ethernet module of the existing station, right? A HelixNet station to transport signals, those HelixNet channels. Is that possible, or do you have to use 4-wire, 2-wire?
4-wire, 2-wire.
All right.
So yeah, the HMS 4X, which, as I said, is now becoming a legacy product for us. It basically, how should I put this? The way that the architecture is built, it's how all the processing is really done at the edges or the endpoints. Basically, doesn't really give it a lot of additional horsepower to do more than we've already squeezed out of it. If you remember, and both of you remember this, of course, back in the day when the HelixNet system was introduced, it had no CCM browser control. It was 4 channels only. It had no linking and so on. And we've squeezed every bit out of that thing through the years with all of the updates that we've done through the years, and we can't get any more, unfortunately. So
the natural evolution, right?
yeah.
So,
but yes, it can still be, of course, interfaced to your Arcadia, or depending on what you're doing, you can take your endpoints and move it over to the Arcadia, or perhaps move the HMS to the B system. There's certainly all sorts of ways to juggle that back and forth.
we'll be excited to see what the future holds for potential IO opportunities for, power line and things like that as we move forward.
A couple of little questions, which I think can wrap up this section here. Eric asks, sync is the system clock that keeps TVCR systems in line? Question mark.
So PTP, did you say that?
Does sync synchronize TVCR or only E1?
Yes, only the E1s. Only the E1s.
Only the E1.
Yeah, so the rest of the system basically is internally synchronized on an internal PTP clock that can then be slaved to a PTP leader somewhere.
And if you have 2 systems that are operating together that aren't synced, what's the effect?
If they're closely co-located, then the effect is mostly in the wireless spectrum, not being able to either fully utilize the wireless spectrum. So
are the slots in the spectrum dynamically allocated so they can sort of find their way, but eventually get kicked off?
They can sort of find their way, but if all the trains don't leave the station at the same time, you can't fill the containers, with the same amount of precision that you could before. So
how far apart should they be if you want them to work together?
Physically?
Not co-located. I mean,
so I would say anything helps. So
yeah, okay.
it's one of these, audio questions that I kind of need to answer with it depends.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically as much physical distance as you can get between the transceivers at least. And then make sure to test out your system if you're in that car shows or whatever, those are always interesting, right?
Other than the analog ports, will LQ connect to Arcadia?
We definitely have plans for Arcadia. I can't speak to things that we have not announced yet, but for now, I'll have to say, what's this space?
Got it. Got it. And one person just asked, can Arcadia do both edge and free speak at the same time? And the answer is yes.
Yes. What else do we have?
That's it.
That's it?
We have a
Okay.
question asking how you do firmware update, but I think we'll be covering that in the programming section.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so here is an example of how an Arcadia system can look like. Very basic, of course, but here you can see that both an edge and the FreeSpeak 2 IP transceiver can be connected to the same system, in addition to two-way radios, a HelixNet, Dante, and E1 connected FreeSpeak. I'll of course put the caveat that the two-way radio integration is something that requires a soldering iron and potentially a pad inline, but given that we have proper relays and transformer isolation on our 4-wire ports, this is something that definitely can be done. Here is the
how many IP HelixNet stations can be added? Up to the
64.
limit of 64?
64, yes.
Which is the normal limit on IP bell packs anyway in HelixNet.
Yeah. I put this in the handouts, but there's a small like system diagram here that kind of just shows how all of this can go together, multiple wireless systems in a performing arts center, along with some HelixNet and so on. Now, going to the real juicy bits here, we've totally reworked the CCM, the browser interface to configure and monitor the Arcadia system. All of this was done, and you can probably by now see a little bit of a theme from the front panel, the rear panel, and so on. It was all done with the idea that this would be familiar with our users that have been using FreeSpeak 2 Base 2, HelixNet and LQ and so on in the past. So it kind of follows the same logic, like of where things are roughly. But we really needed, because Arcadia can do so many more things, we really needed to like rework it to just make everything fit. It is a slightly different proposition to have like a FreeSpeak 2 Base 2, which could do 25 bell packs. Here we can do 40 wireless bell packs and 64 HelixNet bell packs if you wanted to. So some of it is just logistical. So, but we try to like as much as possible to build it from these foundations that we already have. So when you get an Arcadia, as I mentioned on the front panel, you can query it, the IP address, very similarly to our FreeSpeak 2 Base 2 or HelixNet. There you can also get the unique password for the unit, and you can reset it if needed be. The unique password was a change that we needed to do a couple of years ago to be compliant with new privacy regulatory. But you type in the IP address of the unit, and this is the login screen that you get. I'm now going to change the screens here over to my colleague. So as Kelly mentioned, so Arnold is one of our engineers. It's been a pleasure to work with him. So I didn't have an Arcadia on hand, and so I thought it was ideal to invite him to kind of work out a live demo segment here with him. So yeah, Arnold, if we can just log in and then we can kind of just walk through this thing. Arnold's unit is basically reset to default.
So this would be
yeah,
a fresh AM. Can you see
yeah.
the screen? Just checking. You can see the locking
We
screen
can
now.
see the screen, yes.
Perfect. So
The first thing you'll see in the upper left-hand corner is something that kind of goes throughout our system. So we have 3 zones in a configuration system. So hardware is basically where we connect the system. We kind of do the housekeeping part of it, and we make sure that everything gets connected appropriately together. This is kind of the nuts and bolts of the ins and the outs of the system.
Question on the last screen: is the default password listed on the hardware?
It's listed in the front panel menu of the unit.
Okay.
So
just like in FreeSpeak Base 2.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So the second area then of the system configuration is then the configuration tab. That's where we make the system do what you want it to do. Here we're focusing on audio signal flow. We're focusing on giving the user that enables them to do the job. And then the third tab is the status tab, which is basically where we kind of get this confidence. Okay, so everything is connected the way it should be connected. And if there's anything weird, then this is where we go drill down into a potential problem. But yeah, if we go back to the hardware tab, and we perhaps, so if we start with the host, so the host of this CCM is basically the Arcadia that Arnold is running. Arnold, do you want to talk us through this screen?
sure. So first thing I think that catches your eye would be the host device properties, or the table on the left. That would be the name of the unit, which you can change on the right here. I'm not going to change it now, but
Arnold, can
yes,
you zoom in a little bit on that browser?
can.
A little bit more, whatever fits on the screen, so as big as possible.
How about now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Cool. Okay. So so on the left, you can also see the IP address of the unit, which can be very useful because that is what you need to access the CCM. Then there are the connection types. So these are the different things you can connect to the unit as a sort of a reminder. And then we have got the license port for the unit. So that is what Kari just mentioned earlier. You can use our tool on the website to find out what's the best for you. But for now, I've got a 16 license port unit for my use. So on the right, you've got the configurations of the network ports. So on the back of the Arcadia, there are 4 LAN ports. The first one is always configured to the management one. You can change that if you wish to, but as default, it will come as a LAN 1. Then you can also configure your AES67 and your Dante to the different LAN ports, and you can set it to dynamic or static IP if you wish to. To upgrade the unit, you can go to the upgrade tab. You can just select the files and you can press upgrade. You can upgrade the Arcadia unit here, but also if you need to upgrade transceivers or endpoints, it's also done in this page. And if you, sorry, Kari.
Yeah, so basically, those that have upgraded the FreeSpeak 2 system, so that part is quite familiar. You can load in your transceiver file and it trickles through the system, your belt pack files, and it trickles through the system. Then the Arcadia file itself, that's one file, and it includes everything related to HelixNet. So just like when you plug the HelixNet belt pack into an HMS, it would immediately check the version of the main station, and if it was below or higher, it would go on, it would match itself to the unit. The HelixNet will do the same thing here as well.
Yep, and if you're not sure what version you're running on, you can simply download the firmware report and it will show you what versions different endpoint, for example, HelixNet or your FreeSpeak is running on, your different belt packs are running on. Next to that, we've got the wireless tab. Here you can set the admin pin, and you can set, essentially you can set a lot of different things here. So for example, you've got general, which is the admin of the system ID and how the role, the belt packs role are sorted on the table. Then you have got the FreeSpeak Edge, which you can set the transceiver region. So of course, I've got EU because I'm located in the UK. And if you want to exclude any channels, you can also set them here, but I haven't. For the system,
that's for the 5 gigahertz ad system, not applicable if you're just running FreeSpeak 2.
Yeah, and if you're running the FreeSpeak 2, that would be at the bottom part of this page. And this is probably one of the most important things that we need to check is the OTA pin. So if you are registering a belt pack over the air, you will be required to enter a pin on the belt pack, and this is where you set the pin. So 000040 is come as default, but you can change it to any full number. So then we can move on to security. Should we go through this page because there are quite a lot of information on here?
Yeah, not really. So, but basically the web browser, you can load a security certificate into it. This is mainly intended for things like permanent installations in highly secure IT environments and things like that. If this was accessible via the internet, let's say, and so on. But in reality, it's not terribly useful for most people.
Sure. Then at last, we've got the license page on here. And this is where the license that you have will be listed. And if you need to or require to add more licenses to the unit, is done here. You can do it either online or offline, depending on if your unit is connected to the internet.
Would you mind pressing the add licenses online? So when you have ordered more licensed ports from Clear-Com, then you have a ticket number that you can enter right there. If this unit has its management port on the same LAN as your computer that you use to access your public internet with, to do web browsing and so on, then you could press the validate button right here, and it will then tell you the contents of the license ticket, and it would allow you to pick from it whatever you want for this device. If the unit is on the internet or internet reachable this way, then this is a fairly straightforward action. If for whatever reason you cannot get the unit on an internet accessible network, then there is an offline action as well, which basically means that you can ask for what we call a context file. It's basically the fingerprint of the device. You can go online, you can load the license and the context file into a web portal and get back a file that you put into the Arcadia. Whenever you can, I highly recommend doing the online thing, because that's something that just happens in a couple of seconds. Well, this may be let's say a trip to the manual and 10 minutes out of your life. So okay. I will say that there are a couple of things that you may notice there, like there's something here called an Arcadia license and a wireless license. In hindsight, this should probably be hidden, but this is basically, we built, how should I put this? We try to keep a unified code base, for all of our software, and we basically have then the ability to turn some things on and off as they're appropriate for the physical device. So yeah, that's the reason why you see those things here. So let's go to the resources page and let's do something interesting. You'll see that on the left-hand side, the host device, that's the same piece of information. But then in the second center section, we have basically brackets for all of our transceivers, all of our endpoints, be they FreeSpeak belt packs or HelixNet user stations, our physical ports, the 4-wire and 2-wire and so on, Dante ports, and then the license ports. So perhaps we should just start by getting a FreeSpeak up and running, Arnold.
Absolutely. So let's start with connecting a transceiver. So you can either press here the @ sign next to a transceiver, or you can press the slightly bigger one, which is on top next to the add resources, but I'm just going to use the transceiver one. So as you can see, I've got a couple of transceivers actually in the connected, so discovered, but not registered. So I've got 2 FreeSpeak and 1 edge transceiver. So let's connect one of the FreeSpeak transceiver. While it's happening, let me grab a FreeSpeak belt pack.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to throw a question in here. Somebody was asking, can I use FreeSpeak 2.19 and Edge simultaneously? And the answer is yes,
Yes.
right? We have a 40 pack limit, right? So it doesn't care the combination. We just have 40. Obviously, if I had an E1 transceiver, I would see that as an E1, which I saw grayed out, you know.
Yeah, as soon as you were to plug that in, you know, within a couple of seconds, it would turn green.
Understood.
So
Okay,
so we have a transceiver that's happy.
So now we can connect a belt pack. So in order to connect a belt pack, we will go back to wireless, and there are two options, but we're going to demo or show the over-the-air option. So as we mentioned earlier, this is the pin that we use for the OTA registration. And sorry. Oh yeah, this is a fresh system, so perhaps I should create a role for that actually in the config page.
Yeah, so you can see below in the endpoint list there, so you can see the transceiver is now online, and then you can see in the endpoint list that we have now registered 1 FreeSpeak 2 belt pack, but it's not fully online because we don't have a role for it yet, but the registration has happened. So we want to just make a quick detour and create a role for it.
So in order to create a role, we can go to the config page and go to roles. And on the left, we can press the add icon to create a role. So in this case, I'm just going to create one in my name. So on the right, we can select what type of roles we want to create. So it could be a FreeSpeak role, it could be an Edge role, or it could be a HelixNet role. But for now, I'm just going to create one for the FreeSpeak belt pack. So that is created. And now can connect that on my belt pack.
There we go. So now it's discovered the ID of the belt pack, the firmware version of it, and the belt pack is fully online with a role loaded to itself.
Why not default to fixed roles instead of non-fixed?
So to do a fixed role, then you would need to have a role there beforehand.
Yeah, but I mean, right now it's set, so every time they turn it on, they're going to have to select their role.
Oh yeah, but we hadn't. So like, if you go and we fix the role, Arnold, on this one to do that, but that was basically only because the Arnold didn't have any roles created in the system.
Right. But I'm saying in my use of free speak, it always annoys me. I have to go in and check, fix the role on this belt pack, because I know every time they turn it on, it's always going to be the camera operator or Arnold, so I think that'd be nice if that was the default rather than the other. Also, when you go back to the config role screen, I didn't see that role listed after you made it. Where is it shows it on this screen?
It's on the left.
There.
It's on the left.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there you can see it's in use by one belt pack.
Got it.
So Arnold, if we go back to the hardware screen, and if we click the plus button next to the endpoints. So if we expand, so what Arnold showed here was the over-the-air registration, where you can register the belt pack from the belt pack itself, given that the Arcadia is open for registration. This is the workflow that we've had, of course, since the beginning of time. But we also have, like in the past, the USB registration. So if you open that up, then it basically just gives you the instructions on how to do that, how to do the USB registration.
Nice thing about USB registration is it skips the pin.
Yeah, and it's very quick, right? You can
plug it in and it shows you the roles and you select the role. And because it's not fixed, you have to go into the on-air display and fix it.
Exactly. Okay. So with the units that we have now gotten connected to the system, you can see that there's a usage counter on the transceiver. So 1 out of the 10 connection slots on this IP transceiver is now occupied by the one belt pack. And if we select that to show the property screen, then you can see the IP. There's a network tab for the IP settings, and you can also see all of the firmware versions, as well as being able to select the transceiver power setting for that particular IP transceiver.
Do you ever recommend using it on low power, or is that only for testing in the shop?
It depends.
Yeah.
So I definitely see, like, okay, let's say you have co-located systems as an example, or let's say if you only want to, if you need to get user density up, then you can start to play with this a little bit. So like attack tables are often, a hot pot of, users. That's where they congregate, right? So, but you would like to be able to use those time slots somewhere else, like on stage. Then perhaps you can do a trick like having a transceiver even glued under the attack table, put it on low power, so it's just being used by the people that are there. But therefore, you could potentially, given whatever the exact situation is, start to reuse your spectral capacity earlier.
So this is the power of the antenna, the transceiver.
Yes.
Not the belt pack.
No. But in reality, the transmit of the transceiver is most likely always stronger than your belt pack, because inherently the transceiver both well, in normal operating conditions, it's higher up, it has a line of sight, but we carry our belt packs at times, you know, on our hip, and, you know, which is nothing but a big absorber, right? So it can actually work out to a benefit, but, you know, it's not my starting point, I think, for a hit and run system, but it's something that, you know, it's another tool. When
Is there a way to see the time slots in the system?
no.
So quick question, since we're using an IP transceiver, and let's say, you know, we've got multiple switches throughout our system. We've created a VLAN for, say, our wireless. Well, let me stop there for a second. Best practices. Since we have multiple IP devices potentially in an Arcadia, we have a HelixNet endpoint. We have IP transceiver endpoints. What would be best practice for a network for settings related to those VLANs, and from a management standpoint, you know, if I have multiple switches that I'm going to be connecting via fiber?
Yeah, Arnold, can you give me control or give me the screen share? I'm just gonna.
Sorry, I don't mean to take us off on a
No, I
tangent
think
there,
this
but
is the.
you know, this is because we're in an IP environment here. I want to make sure everybody is understanding.
Yeah, no,
that.
this is a very important topic actually. So, and this is the appropriate place for it. Do you see it in the little control panel, Arnold?
Yeah, I
can
think
do
I've
it.
just given that to you.
I got it. I'll give it to you.
Thanks everybody for
Pete
this.
has everything.
Well, you know what?
Have you gotten my screen yet?
Yep, we got it.
Okay.
We're on you.
Okay, so see, there we go. So this is particularly important when we're dealing with the 1.9 gigahertz systems. If you have an Arcadia running 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz and then 1.9 of either flavor, you don't really need to think about any of this. But there are some fundamental differences in FreeSpeak to 1.9 system that are defined by if you have the directly connected E1 transceiver or the IP transceiver. So E1 transceiver can do 5 bell packs. It uses a compression mechanism that's called G722, which sounds nice and has been around forever. It's excellent for battery life and things like that. Like you all know, we can do 10 transceivers over the 2 splitters. It's a plug and play, really connectivity method. You don't really need to think too much about it, right? The IP transceiver can do 10 bell packs per transceiver, and it uses a codec called BB32, which basically takes the same frequency, well, the same bandwidth, the audio bandwidth as G722, and instead of needing to use 2 time slots for it, it can squeeze that into 1 time slot for transmit and 1 for receive. So we can do 16 of these per Arcadia, but it absolutely requires an AES67 capable network. And so that's a phrase that I think is good to use because it's kind of a benchmark. If your network is good enough for AES67, and that means more than just like, okay, this switch is AES67 capable, it's also what you plugged into it, right? Because the switch may be happy to do some AES67 if the wind is blowing in the right direction, but if you then throw something else on top of it, perhaps not so much anymore. So it's how you really use it. So it's an AES67 capable network, not an AES67 capable switch. Very important, you know, thing to differentiate.
And is that
Now,
a PTP end to end?
Say again, I missed the first thing.
End to end?
Yes. So basically, both the Arcadia and all the transceivers, they will, get PTP clock, all of them. That synchronizes both the audio, which actually is the easier part. And then it also, in all the transceiver, it generates the DECT sync flag that starts every 10 milliseconds to designate that here is a carrier and there are 24 time slots on it that can be loaded with bell packs. So all that to say is that whenever then we have instabilities in the network, then this PTP clock can start to drift. And it can be a slow, subtle drift, and perhaps nobody will notice. But when it becomes erratic, then you can be in a position where you really don't have much stability for yourself.
And what causes that instability? Putting non-AES67 items on the same network? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's basically just the performance of the network overall, with how you're deploying it.
And
so
if
the rule,
you separate a VLAN for your AES67 to isolate it from other things, would that help?
That certainly can help, especially with the management of the thing. But then keep in mind, though, that at that point, you're starting to talk about the quality of your switches. So, we all know, and we probably all own like a $25 switch. If I plug my single transceiver that I have at home to my Arcadia via that switch, I can just see it cycle in a state of disconnections and reconnections, and I can put a PTP analysis tool on it, and I can see it just move all over the place. It really can't really do it. So there's a couple of things inside switches. I'm not an expert, by the way, on switches, but processing power, like that's processing power and memory for to maintain the quality of service queues and the ingress and the egress of the switch. That's the stuff that costs money. So, it's not the myth or anything like that the more, it costs, to get those higher, just like with your computer, right?
So we'd be looking at something like a Cisco SG, 300s. We're talking about the Netgear AVI, AVLs, the Luminexes, right? That kind of those level of product is what we want to make sure we're using for our networks. That's my words, not yours.
I think that's the entryway of for it. Yes, that's like you don't go below that. Right. Now, but then you need to keep in mind those are all fine products, and we have like settings for them that we publicize. Those are all fine products, but keep in mind like what else you put into it. So sure, you can put a VLAN and then put gigabit of 300 channels of Dante on top of it, and now it starts to behave differently because it's also trying to do that. It may be on a VLAN, but it's still the shared processor and the shared memory of the device that's still trying to catch up with everything. So it all depends on what you're doing, and we have extensive documentation on like, okay, you want to make this fit into a big, nice network, you should go through that and read it. But if you just want something simple for like 4 transceivers and you don't want to deal with any of that, then you could definitely just run your 4, 5, 6 transceivers of an ST350 using our settings that we have like a template for, and then not have to worry about anything. But as I said, switch is one thing. What you put into the switch can totally change that equation. So that's my. Go ahead.
I've got another question as long as we're on this slide right here.
Yeah.
In the United States, DECT is limited to 50 time slots. And the E1s, because they use 2 time slots, are limited to 25 bell packs.
Yeah.
But the IPs using a single time slot can do the whole 50. So how do you coordinate between these two to make them work happy within those time slots?
So DECT by design, that's really the nice thing about it figures it out, like who gets what time slots and so on. I mean,
But I mean, if I had 25 E1 bell packs running, I basically use the spectrum up. I can't put any IP
Yes.
bell packs in there at all.
Absolutely. So rule of thumb, and this is really rudimentary thing to do, to be honest, but if you have 4 E1 bell packs, then it should count like 8 in the other domain. It's not precisely like that, but just to throw something in.
Rough figures, right?
The rough figure.
Now,
So,
do I need to do anything with IGMP specific to these transceivers different than HelixNet on the network? Like a IGMP snooping on versus off?
I need to consult my memory is not what it should be.
That's all good. We'll get those resources because you mentioned that maybe some other things.
And so, okay, but to just finish up on this, so the 3 different things that are here in play. So yes, so we have the increased capacity to density on the IP because it uses a different codec, right? We have the that we really need to think about and our networks when we're dealing with IP transceivers. We need to give them quality network connectivity, and how we achieve that with a really expensive switch or a relatively inexpensive thing like an ST350, and then just keeping that for the transceivers, or something really expensive if you want to put the entire universe on it. Like that's an equation, like where you want to be there, and the answer is probably different for most people. But then the last bit that I kind of wanted to get in here is that while the system can be concurrently connected to E1 1.9 gigahertz transceivers and IP 1.9 gigahertz transceivers, because of the codec difference, you cannot roam between the two. And so that basically means you should use one or the other in the same RF space. If you had an application, if you were doing a show in the Moscone in San Francisco, and you were doing the north and the south hall, and you wanted to just run some network connectivity to the south hall while keeping the E1 in the other one, it's not a problem. The bell pack falls offline, you walk over the street, you walk into the other building, it connects to the other system, and the bell pack figures out which codec to be on and so on.
Now
the same bell pack, but 2 different.
Can't do that within the same space.
The FreeSpeak 2 bell packs, the standard, the ones you have, not Edge, all can work on IP or E1.
Yes.
Do they have to be turned off and turned back on to switch between the?
It does it itself. So,
okay.
So basically, if it were to, in the Moscone example, if the South Hall has an IP system, it will be running happily in BV32. You walk over the street, it falls offline, and it just searches. Then it sees its system again, and it sees that there is a different codec there. It actually, in the background, is rebooting itself and then reconnecting to the system. But there needs to be an air gap between the system, which is why we have in multiple places in our kind of high-level documentation, like use one or the other. The
cable length on the E1 transceivers is standard network length.
It's actually more than that. So the E1, which is kind of a close relative to T1, it's like an old school trunk line in the PPX world. It could roll from a cabinet down the street to your, little PPX system in your office, give you a little trunk line to AT&T or whoever it was back in the day. That is where it originally comes from. So it can actually go quite far. I'm not going to say go 5,000 feet, but because that's going to become really cable dependent, but it definitely can go beyond 100 meters. We have some documentation on this if somebody wants to.
But maybe at that length, it needs to be locally powered.
Correct, especially depending on the gauge of the cable. Now, keep in mind that in this day and age, we've been pushing the envelope for like high-powered PoE devices, like not necessarily intercom devices. I'm just talking about in general. We have a tremendous PoE capabilities starting to show up, 50 watts, 90 watts, etc. But of course, the gates of the cable needs to go up. So we're starting to definitely see some, available cable that's, getting, smaller gauge numbers on it, which of course is really nice for power. But yeah, leave home without your 28 gauge patch cable. We don't want to see that in our systems.
And shielded Cat5 obviously is really
shielded is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that all makes sense. And so this is in the handouts, but this is basically what I talked about earlier. We do have like a long guide, which is really intended for like, okay, you want to make this work on a really converged network with a bunch of things in it. And then we do have a shorter one that's kind of intended for more of a hit and run. I'm going to grab my Arcadia and my couple of transceivers and my SG350 style switch and bring it to a show. So, so yeah, whenever deploying these things for the first time, I suggest doing the homework and just call us if there is anything. With that said, Arnold,
Yes.
let's go back to the CCM.
Yeah, let's do that. Is it back?
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, so we have connected an IP transceiver. We have paired the bell pack to it. So yeah, as an example, so the transceiver. So if we wanted to look at the stability, because now we've been talking about network stability, let's set the status icon for the transceiver that's connected. That will, the little green tick box there. So that will take us to the status page and select the transceiver, and then we probably need to zoom out. Then here in the properties field for this transceiver, we will see the network stats, I believe, on the bottom, where we'll see like here you can see the delay, the mean path delay, and you can see the offset that the PTP is applying, and you can see some changes there. And we definitely, the big thing is that we don't want to see drastic changes. It's okay to see some changes. The system is designed to handle that, but we don't want it to be erratic. So what kind of switch do you have, Arnold?
It's a, I can't see now. It's an old switch. It's an old Netgear switch.
Okay. So not one of the fancy ones.
No.
Okay. So let's go back to the hardware tab and let's look at our interface ports. Physical ports.
Before you go back, if you could go back to that screen previous there, what are the little blue 0/0 indicators in the antenna under the antenna names?
Oh, it's a counter for the antenna. So you can see the IP transceiver that we have on the right-hand side that's highlighted. We're using one of the 10 slots.
So if there was a T1 antenna in use, it would say 1 of 5.
Or 1 of 4 if it was a 2.4.
2.4.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Cool.
So it detects the transceiver and puts the limitation, the constraint there.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, so if we go to the physical ports and take a look at what we have there. So here we basically have all of our 4 wires. You can see 4 wire 1 through 7, and like we previously mentioned, 4 wire 8 is then in the default. It's labeled states announcement program audio input. Let's select a random 4 wire. There we go. So here you can see we have our input and output gains. We can the 4 wires have on the pins 1, 2, 7, and 8, they have an incoming and outgoing Clear-Com style 4 wire call signals. So here those can be disabled if you want to. And then in the 4 wire mode, what we call a port function, we always had a little bit of a silly nomenclature, you know, with changing the pin outs or swapping the send and receive on an RJ45. It used to be, or still is in FreeSpeak 2 base 2 and LQ. We call them 2 panel and 2 matrix, I think it was, which was not very descriptive. Now there's new terminology, so where we refer to them as 4 wire or 4 wire X for a crossover mode, basically. So basically, if you have, say, 2 Arcadias, then connected together with a straight out network cable, then one of those would need to be in the X mode and the other one would need to be in stand mode, so that the send and receive on will match up. If we take a look at a 2 wire port, then, you know, same thing, input and output gains, of course, and then we can enable power and we can change the mode between Clear-Com and RTS-TW modes.
Does that 4 wire X also switch to signaling back and forth?
Yes. Yeah. So it's basically swapping with relays in the back of the box. You can even hear the relays click, which always makes me slightly happy. I like relays. So yeah, when you flip it to an RTS mode, you will see, well, you won't see it, but then basically, in this case, the C and the D would both have the same audio on them. So basically, the C to pin 3 or 2. Sorry, it's getting late in the day. Well, you get what I mean. But both of them, they basically become identical. We then have the ability to terminate and then, of course, do the very important auto-nulling for the port. Now, then Dante ports. So that's kind of our next thing. So when you get the system out of the box, we don't have any Dante ports created for you. You would need to create them. The main reason is that not filling the system up with drop downs of 64 things to select from if you don't need them. Or so we basically here we need to create the Dante ports, and let's just create one for now. Oh, nice. That does something for my ego. So now we have a Dante port. This is, and here we are mapping it to the Dante channel. So that's basically where that audio is going to show up in the Dante controller.
Is that setting up both the in and the out in Dante?
Correct. They're tied together.
And does the port label? Does the port label push to Dante controller?
No. It does not. So the port label is only within the Arcadia. Okay. In our Eclipse systems, we have it as an option where we can actually take a Dante label from Dante, but we cannot do that in Arcadia. And even in Eclipse, we have not done it so that you push it from Arcadia to Dante controller, mainly for the reason that then kills all your routes. So just editing a label in Dante controller, everything is label contingent in behind the scenes in the Dante controller. But okay, we created a port, and now that appears in our list. And if we click that, we can again do, gain controls and so on. And then now this has consumed the license from our system. Now then, finally, we have here a list of all of our license ports. And here you can see if it's being used and by what. And you can see there's a column that says allowed endpoint, and all of them are currently set to any. But here we could take a chunk of them and we could declare that they can only be used by a certain function. So meaning, Dante or a FreeSpeak BelPack or a HelixNet channel. So this doesn't have to be used, but if somebody just wants to make sure, I need to reserve for my 28 BelPacks or whatever it is, then that would be the way to do that. Sometimes we need protection from ourselves. Okay, so now we've gotten some things up and running on our system, and now we can start to actually get some audio flowing. And so if we go to the configuration tab, and we start just like in the FreeSpeak 2 page 2, we start with our channels. Here we can create up to 100 channels. As you can see, the layout, even though we've changed colors and formatting and so on, the layout is not the same, but it's like the concepts are still there. So here on the left-hand side, we have a list of the channels. So out of the box, we created 4 channels for you, but you can add as you need. In that list, you can see how many ports or how many roles are actively on that channel, routed in or out of it, and finally, how many talkers we currently have active.
Back
So,
on that
like,
channel there, or that one there, where it says on channel 1 HelixNet enabled or disabled, that allows you to make channels that aren't HelixNet channel, so they don't use up a HelixNet channel license.
Correct. So right now, out of these 6 channels that we can now assign in the system, 4 of them are being published, if you will, to all of the HelixNet endpoints that we have on the system. And that's what we can do selectively per channel, up to a total of 25. So you can see here in channel 1, we have the Arcadia. Basically, that's listening to channel 1 right now. Arnold's BelPack is also on that channel. And if you can hit the talk button for us, then you would, just like in our other systems, you would be able to see the talk counter, and you could see the red arrow showing that Arnold has a talk button engaged. Arnold, can you show us how to rename the channel as well? Probably be a good one.
Yeah, so if you have a channel you want to rename, look for the pencil icon with the tooltip saying edit, and you click on that, and you can change the channel name to anything. Remember, there is a limit to the length of the label. So for the labels, you can only have something up to 10 characters. So you can have something that's too long. But for example, this can be and you can see on the left in the list is also changed to whatever you have input here.
And then very similarly to what we've had in our previous systems, now, of course, we've swapped it around. The interface ports are on the right-hand side, but here we can easily, by tapping the plus number, we can add, say, 4-wire port 1 to this channel and Dante 1 if we wanted to. And you can then see in the interface, in the ports list, you can see which channel it's currently on. And there is a little icon there with an eye where you can actually get access to that channel if you're looking for in which channel that port is. So I guess our Dante port is not online. That's the warning.
Probably because it's
right
not
there.
connected to anything.
Exactly.
Quick question around Dante. Let's say
Yeah.
I'm in a broadcast facility that's using AS67 instead of Dante, or doesn't have any Dante present. Can I still use that to interconnect audio?
Yeah. So what we have inside the device is a fully featured Brooklyn module.
Mm-hmm.
So within the constraints of what what Dante allows you to do AS67 wise, you can, depending on, of course, how deep you need to go into it. Do you need to like spit out dedicated files to subscribe to it and things like that? You may need Dante Domain Manager or something like that. So yeah,
So if I'm putting it in AS67 mode though via controller, I can still use my Dante ports, and I
yes.
still have all my IPT
Yes.
units, that are using AS67 as well.
Internal, I mean, this is getting technical, but like internally in the unit, there is a Dante domain and there is an AES67 domain, which we exclusively use for our transceiver transport.
Right. So those are not shared. So then the Dante domain would be where this AES67 audio traffic.
Interfacing audio.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And for people, if you're on, if you see in the web browser, I've also updated with that IP documents from your website, both HelixNet and then the network recommendations for AES67 document. So everybody be sure to download those because there's some excellent material in there. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, let's then go. Oh, okay. So Arnold, you're showing us, what are you showing us?
It's the icon to show which channel has the 4-wire port 1 assigned to. So on the left, you can see they're highlighted in blue. So we've got 3, 4-wire port 1 is in 3 of the channels, and you can see it's used in multiple channel with the bracket 3 telling you it's in 3 channels.
How do you turn that on?
Oh, by clicking on the eye.
Okay.
That's how to turn that on.
Okay.
But it doesn't, if you click on the eye and we have the Dante channel in there as well, will the Dante turn blue too?
Yeah, not the Dante, just the channels that it's in, right?
So add the Dante channel to that camera, even though it's dead.
That's fine. That will be okay. The warning will tell you that the Dante is not in use, but if you click on the eye, it will still highlight the channel.
But it's not highlighting the Dante down on the bottom here, on the right.
What do you mean by highlighting on?
In the ports list, it's not indicating that it's connected. Oh wait, did you just turn on that eye on the?
On 4-wire 1, that's where it's right now.
Okay.
Okay, so Arnold, do you want to walk us through the roles?
Sure.
We took a quick look at them. Let's leave the groups aside for a second.
Sure. So earlier we created a free speak role by clicking on the add role icon, but actually we have also got templates to look at. So if we open up the template, we have got templates for all the endpoints type. We've got the FreeSpeak Edge build pack, we've got the FreeSpeak 2, then we have got the HelixNet build pack, the HelixNet remote station, and the HelixNet speaker station. But we can also just create them by selecting the endpoints that we want. So for example, let's say I want to create a HelixNet belt pack. I just want to connect the HelixNet belt pack. I can select the HelixNet belt pack on the right, and I can click create to create one of this endpoint role. So it says successful, and if we go back to the page, we can see that on the left we have got a HelixNet belt pack role created now. And that means when I do connect a HelixNet endpoint, it will be available on the endpoints screen, and we can select that on the endpoint. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah,
And also,
basically we have all of the role types in a unified system, where previously we needed to go between our FreeSpeak 2 base 2 and our HelixNet when we were like dealing with our different users. Arnold, would you mind going to the add roles dialog? So one thing that is important to note is that just like we talked about with the license port, so where a FreeSpeak belt pack requires a license port, just like in a FreeSpeak 2 base 2, FreeSpeak belt pack requires its own dedicated role, and once it's taken the role, it's occupied. However, HelixNet, just like it could do in the HelixNet system, you can create a role and you can apply it to multiple different endpoints of the same type. So if you want to create, say, a single follow spot role for a HelixNet belt pack, you can apply that to all of your 8 follow spots, should you have them. So that's kind of just reinforcing that it's still that same way.
Does the
one role per belt pack.
Does the creation of the role take the slot in the license, or does the adding of the belt pack take the slot?
Adding the belt pack being online, being connected to the system.
Okay.
You can have more registered to the system than you're licensed for.
Got it.
Do you perhaps want to select the HelixNet belt pack role? So, and if you can select one of the key sets, either one. So here, yeah, you're picking channels. You will see a little icon next to this, next to every single channel that we can assign to HelixNet devices. Those are the HelixNet enabled ones. If you try to assign it to a channel that doesn't have that icon, then it will not work for you. You will get an error. Now, this icon, by the way, this is for technology that we have that's called the IV core, which is kind of the fundamental to the distributed mixing principles that HelixNet sits on. So, okay, we can close this. Below that, you can then see all of our regular actions that or settings that we do per key. Things like LUTs disables. Here, in the case of HelixNet, this is slightly different depending on the endpoint that we have. Here we can do secondary talk actions. So we can do a call on talk as an example. We can, in the case of HelixNet, we can do volume limit, so you can't turn all the way down. In HelixNet, we can do talk interlock groups, so one channel or the other, never both at the same time. Tally control and so on. So this is per key, and then like Arnold showed on the right-hand side, we have the overarching settings for the device, such as side tone, screen brightness, and so on. Just
once you've created
that these properties are very different between the different endpoint roles. Sorry, Pete.
Once you've created that role, can you clone it or copy it?
The clone button.
That will clone the HXNBP.
You wanna
Whatever's
press it,
highlighted.
Arnold? There you go.
Okay.
And then if you wanted to, you could select all 3 belt packs, just very similarly to what we've done in previous systems, and you can do,
Right.
you know, the same setting for multiple of one of them. You can see them all stack up there. And then of course then we have the Arcadia as a separate, all the front panel of the Arcadia. Any questions on the roll screen or something specific you guys want to see?
There was a question which actually was from way before. Can the analog 4-wire ports be set to split?
No.
So the 1 through 7 are just 4-wire, and only 8 is already a split.
Yeah, only the 8 is already a split, correct. The others are tied together in their assignments.
And 8 can be combined?
Yes, just the way that we've historically combined it in the FreeSpeak 2 base 2. If you put the assay and the program into the same channel,
They're combined,
and
okay.
and you get the mix minus and everything like you would expect. Okay. Then in the configuration tab again, then the final tab there is the logic one. So here we can, this is basically mimicking what we can do in the FreeSpeak 2 base 2 with the GPIs and the GPIOs. So basically when there's a GPI, you can create a route from that. From a FreeSpeak role to or even just a port.
And that program port is the program port on the from the 8. Analog 4-wire.
Yes, number 8. For the GPIOs,
I haven't pressed confirm. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. From GPIOs, we can basically, make a statement. So what should we do? Let's do the camera channels as an example. And on behavior, let's do a call signal. So now that whenever there's a call signal on the camera channel, you would get a relay, the relay number 1 kicked. In the below logic module, we can then, make kind of logic statements like, if this happens, then let's do that. If this cross point is made, then do something else. So yeah, if we want to just whip up. So if Arnold talks to the camera channel as an example, then let's make a call signal, or let's make another cross point, or let's make a relay go from low to high. So those are the kind of things that we can do in here.
Where would the cross point go to?
Right now we're not doing a cross point, but okay, let's change this, that whenever the Arnold is talking to the camera channel, then let's make a cross point action, and then you just make the other cross point. So, and that could be from 4-wire 3 to 4-wire 2 or something like that. So now every time Arnold hits the camera button, that happens. I deliberately skipped the groups. They work basically exactly the same as in FreeSpeak base 2, where we, where we can make a group which is effectively a group of point-to-points. So the members that we would put in here, which is done in the role settings, just like in FreeSpeak base 2, where basically we can make a group where if you press a group talk, you basically have a stacked point-to-point, and the person that responds to that on a reply key on a free speak belt pack goes to the caller, the original caller of.
Can those groups go on HelixNet belt packs as well?
No, we can only assign HelixNet enabled channels to HelixNet packs. The free speak can be assigned to anything, so that's the differentiator right there. So as you can see, we have all the groups, all the ports, etc., available, which is why it costs us a single license port per unit, while the HelixNet costs us one per channel. Let's move on to the status tab. So what we see on the top here is basically the idea is to be able to give a bird's eye view of the system. So all of these circular icons, they designate a connected transceiver like this IPT 1.9 GHz transceiver, which is online, or the belt pack that's next to it. All is in good health. The ones that are unlit next to it are the disconnected E1s. They're just not there right now. You can see the 4 wires online, and then of course on the uttermost left-hand side of the screen, there is the Arcadia itself. When you see something bad happening here, you can, like Arnold just did, you can click that icon and it brings you to the detailed view. Like in this instance, it's bringing us to the detailed view of the Arcadia, showing us all the details of the network ports, how its uptime, its PTP settings, where it's slaved from, or if it's running its own internal reference, fan speeds, firmware versions, and so on. If we select perhaps the FreeSpeak 2 belt pack, then it takes us to this familiar grid that we've had in the FreeSpeak 2 base 2. You immediately on the right-hand side get the detailed status of that belt pack, including the current state of the volumes and button presses and so on, battery life, all the things that we're kind of used to. And similarly, like we've seen before, you can go to the connected transceiver and get the detailed information about that. But this is probably familiar to most FreeSpeak 2 users until now. There is one, like a little shortcut here. In the right-hand side, the properties field for the selected belt pack, you can see this little cog icon that actually brings you back to the hardware page selected to that belt pack. So right there, and you can use the same trick. If you click the status icon right here, it brings you right back to the status. So like if you find yourself needing to do this loop where you're like, troubleshooting something or whatever, this is kind of like a fast way of doing that. We then have the next tab, which is our logic.
Or as you're adding belt packs, that's where you would click to go set it to be a fixed roll.
You would always do that in the hardware tab, the fixed roll.
Right.
In the
But when
status
if you're syncing your belt packs using a USB and watching on the previous screen to see it come on, go back one screen. There you see your belt pack comes on, but now the next step is you want to make it fixed. You click on the gear, you go make it fixed, and you're done.
Yeah. I guess the train of thought here is that you do all the assembly of the system here. Now, in the FreeSpeak 2 base 2, we have the grid in the main menu. But here we the way we envisioned the system with, not 25 belt packs, but 100, like we can do now, 64 HelixNet belt packs and 40 FreeSpeak belt packs. We just can't fit it on a screen. So and plus 64 Dantes and so on. So we needed to move things around in this area a little bit. So I would always highly recommend doing kind of the assembly of the system in the hardware tab and going to the status one once everything is kind of humming along. If you go to the logic tab, then now we have Pete, you had a question?
Yeah, if you go to a HelixNet belt pack role and want to add program to a key on that belt pack, what do?
Okay, so you remember that on all HelixNet devices, we have a separate program volume controller.
Right.
So if the program audio is in a channel that you're using for HelixNet, then it goes right to that control automatically.
And how do you add the program input to that channel?
If we go to the channels, just add the port to add the program to this channel. It's HelixNet enabled.
Okay. Put it right into the party line. Okay.
Exactly. But you still have it on a separate control, if that makes sense.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, in the logic tab, we can basically just see the status of the logic, and we can force the GPIs to an on or off state to debug our external circuits and so on. And then finally we have an event log that shows us things like roams and things like that in the system. Battery states, things going online and offline and whatnot. We don't have anything in the log right now?
No, because I've got
our system is not big enough.
Not much to show for.
Yeah.
Is this the log that you would send to Clear-Com if there was an issue?
Yeah, Arnold, let's show them the support info. That's probably the most valuable one.
So under status overview, if we go to Arcadia or host device, there is a button called support info. And by clicking that, it will generate a very comprehensive sort of report. So it actually sends you a warning, because when it generates a report, it will capture the status of all the transceivers and endpoints. So you might experience some temporarily problems with the.
But you wouldn't want to do it during the show.
No, you do it after the show. So yeah, this is an intrusive action. It's really comping through the entire system and pulling everything together. So
and
no,
what is the action. It says reset to default. Where do you set the default?
The default is set by me and Arnold.
So does that
is the manufacturing default?
Config?
Factory default.
Does that wipe out the whole system config? Yeah. So you don't want to hit that either.
No. And I think we do give some warning there. Now, in the upper right-hand corner, you can see a save and restore button, where you can, you can save the entire system basically, and then hitting the restore, then you can load a file into it. We can do that from the front panel as well.
So if you were doing two different shows in the same room, but one show was 25 belt packs and the other show was 12 belt packs and a bunch of Dante, you could save the program and just reload each separate show there.
Yes, you could.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how are we, Kelly?
Well, you know what? I've been the fire hose finally, has subsided in the water flow. This is just really great. I think a lot of these questions today, it really helped to identify some key areas, because I know we've been seeing these in the wild now for the past few months. Where it's nice to see population growing of devices out in the field, and certainly a lot of these functionality. I think one of the recurring themes I was seeing was people liked how the similarities of programming, even though it is a new GUI, and we know that where it's a great indication of the direction that things are heading in terms of this unified base station type of so if you're building out a wireless, if you're building out your wired, it's really great. Another couple key things that I think to point out here, and that you brought up very clearly, and the handouts around your network suggestions, Doc, is we're seeing that a PTP leader clock is really, as soon as you move beyond your very basic systems, it really is I feel a necessity, and B, it brings a lot of benefit with it. Living in the all AOIP world, as you really pointed out, well, you're only as strong as your weakest endpoints are on that network. And I think we've all gotten very comfortable with, oh, this is great, I'm going to land everything, and everything talks to everything until everything doesn't. And in which case it's not so great, right?
No,
And
I mean, you would never like buy yourself $1 million PA and not buy any power distribution with it, right? Like,
right.
It is kind of the same thing. You're not going to plug your $1 million PA into a bunch of waiver strips that you picked up at Home Depot. Like,
right.
It's a no-go. It's a boring infrastructure, right? But it better be solid.
So one interesting question, restore to default, does it erase license upgrades?
No.
Only
Those
your
are
programming.
permanent.
So
Yeah.
if you were bringing the system back from a show, it was on a rental house, some system, you just click on reset default, it's ready to go out on a rental again.
Yeah.
So, of course, the infamous question that shows up on every intercom session is there an offline editor coming so I can build this? I mean, everybody, it's always the question.
Yeah, let's put it, it's on our minds.
Okay,
Sure.
there you go. Well, we asked the question, you answered it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at it, it's like, okay, this is no bigger than a 5 belt pack or a 25 belt pack system. It's just like it doesn't take you that long to hammer through. But of course, now we have more stuff, and there's more labeling to be done, more key assignments. So we're cognizant of that fact. I don't know when, but it's on our minds.
But if some rental houses might have a 128 online for their clients to use to create their programs.
Yeah.
And then you save that program, and when you do the save program, you can save it to a file on your computer and go out and then load it into the rental device which was sent out.
And it doesn't need to be a 128. It could be a 16, because you can create all your channels and all your roles that way.
Okay. So you're not limited to programming by the size of the license, only in usage.
Exactly.
So you can take a 16 and then load it into a 128 and have everything.
Yeah. Just, if you go the other way around, of course, and your show really needs the 128, make sure that what's being prepped for you at the rental company has the appropriate amount of licenses. So,
Eric asked, how does it tie into Eclipse? Well, it would just be 4-wire or Dante or
4-wire Dante, yeah.
Yeah, into Eclipse, right? And then
Arnold,
there was a question which what's that?
Sorry, say again.
Arnold, can you give me the screen?
I think it's yours. But let me just send it back to you.
Okay. Go ahead, Pete.
How's that?
Where's the question? about a license for HelixNet base. I don't see where did it go.
While you're looking up licensing, just to go back to program for a second, because there was a question that came up. When we put program on, so if I have, say, cameras who might not have access to production, as long as I assign program to a channel that that particular user HelixNet endpoint has,
Yeah, to the
they
camera.
can dial it up, or you
Yep.
could just put it on an unused HelixNet channel. Obviously, you're
Yes,
burning up your
absolutely.
HelixNet channels, but you could put
Yeah.
it there as well, right? So
Absolutely.
as long as it marries up, that was always the one thing I always had to remind myself with HelixNet is that when you add program, it's laying it on top of that
Yeah.
PL circuit. So as long as they have program to the PL circuit that they have access to, it'll always be accessible via the program controls of the belt pack.
Yeah. It was one of these things that a clever engineer came up with, and it's really cool because, like, hey, now you have control of your program, right? And but it's like it's not always the most as you said, you need to remind yourself of, like, oh, that's how it works. And then you figured it out and you're happy because now it's not just pre-mixed with everything else you're doing, right?
Right, exactly.
So I know we're running out of time, but I just wanted to, like, in the back of the handouts, there is a couple of things that I wanted to mention. So online, we have something called a knowledge center. We have this for many of our products that basically it's a central website that brings you to, various different quick start guides and things like that. So it's really trying to accumulate, material related to this particular device. So the Arcadia has one of those as an example. This is not locked or anything like that. You can get this to this anywhere. So I just wanted to make a note of that, the Arcadia Knowledge Center. Basically a center point for everything all documentation you need to access for Arcadia.
I found that question.
Say again?
I found that question. They wanted to know if they had to get a license for each HelixNet base station for interoperability with Arcadia. I said no. The HelixNets work fine. They'd just be connected via 4-wire.
Exactly. It's separate. It's basically another system that you're interfacing to this one.
And then he also asked, I'm assuming he means, will there ever be more than 128 port Arcadia? He asks, I probably missed it, but licensing can be increased for future expansion. Well, yes, you can keep adding licenses up to 128, but I think that's the limit. If you wanted more, you could add another Arcadia base.
Yes, exactly.
On top of it.
Yeah. So yes, the limit is now 128 license ports. We started at 96.
Interesting note from Jeremy. He was using the product and the CCM times out. He doesn't want it to do that. How does he stop that from happening?
Yeah, that's on my list of things. So I'm happy to have my esteemed colleague from engineering. There are two reasons for this. So one is an underlying one that we'll be dealing with in a service update. But then there is another one which is a little bit of a nuisance to many of us, but it's the security element of it. So it's like,
well,
should we allow people
an option
to bypass it? Yeah. I'll make a note of that. But I'm totally in agreement. Right now it's too short. It's actually not quite consistent for some underlying boring reasons. But yeah, I'll make a note of that for sure.
I have noticed in some installations in a theater that I was in that there was a E1 free speak system which used the base, which could become an Arcadia, but obviously it's now the new standard you send out with your standalone free speak E1, right? In other words, old standalone base is not being sent out anymore. You're sending out.
No, we are absolutely. The FreeSpeak 2 base 2 is still a very popular product, and there's plenty of people who know it and love it. And
But what I saw in this venue is they just had what looked to be an Arcadia, but it only had
Oh, that's the edge base.
that's the edge space.
So
it
they
is.
weren't using edge. They were only using the T1.
Yeah, no. The edge space has E1 connectors on it as well. It can do all flavors of FreeSpeak as well.
Okay.
But with these limitations. So with our 16 bell packs total, 6 IP transceivers, 10 E1s, and 8 Dante. That's the max, that thing.
So that edge base could also be your new IP Helix base.
No, doesn't
No?
have HelixNet. It's a wireless base station. While on Arcadia
doesn't have HelixNet connectivity?
No.
Oh, okay.
So it's
for that you have to go to regular Arcadia.
Yes, exactly. So Arcadia, this kind of it amuses me, the central station term. You know, historically we had base stations for wireless systems and main stations. I mean, historically, of course, we needed places to put our analog radios in, so that was the base station. Now we're no longer tethered to that constraint, that reality. So as you know, we put them in transceivers that we spread around today, not in a 1RU. So, but the concept that, you know, there's a lot of our customers that just want a wireless base station. And that's what the FreeSpeak edge space is.
Place for everything.
Got more questions?
No, that pretty much adds them up. There a couple more questions of where's the offline editor coming, and I said, and we already answered that. But
so if I just plow through these couple of slides, so
Please.
There's a lot of infographis, you know, because now that we can connect so many things to it, it's perhaps easy to get lost, or so these infographics actually can really are a good source of reference for the license ports, for okay, what can be assigned to what, and so on. So then there's a link here to the port calculator we talked about, and the Encore 2-wire power supply calculator. Then we have an awesome wiki, basically online, which we call the Clear-Com Solution Finder. It is built and maintained by our frontline technicians, so tech support, applications engineers. I do some things there as well, not a lot. They have things in here like, you know, switches that we've learned are no good, or switches that we know work well, we just use these settings. All sorts of things like that have been accumulated there through the years. This is a living, breathing repository of information. It's very valuable if you just want to go scrounge around for something. It both has topics, and you can search for things and so on. We then have online a list of all of our webinar recordings. And finally, you know, if you're dealing with these systems on a regular instance and you want to keep up to date, there is a firmware update mailing list where we announce new firmware updates and so on. We don't use that for any other marketing. We have, of course, other lists for those kind of things. But this is to say, now we have a new update. It includes this, this, and this, and so on. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I have.
Well, thanks for sticking it out with us. We're not known for our short webinars. So and I know, you know, especially connecting around the world. So thanks for taking that time. You know, I think there are a lot of really great questions today. Arnold, thank you for all your work in the engineering team. Please pass along our appreciation for a lot of the unseen work that the engineering teams put together on these products. They're a vital piece to those of us who make a living sitting behind these boxes in a lot of different areas. And we appreciate Clear-Com and their listening. You know, from day one when we launched Practical Show Tech, they immediately raised their hand to be a part of it and to be on with us, and we appreciate that. We know that doing deep dives and digging into product at a very granular level like we do brings up a lot of questions, and sometimes shows us a lot of new opportunities. So thanks for being so willing to listen and make those tweaks. And just so you know, every one of Pete's ideas are great ideas. All right, so just implement them. Don't even think about them.
So yeah, to your point, Kelly. I mean, without our engineers, nothing would leave the napkin at the airport bar, right? So, so Pete, can you give me the screen again, just for a second?
Sure.
Because there is something that you know, this is a little personal, perhaps, but as I was kind of putting this together, this morning, really, then there was something that kind of came to mind. You can see this again, and that was the realization is that there is a colleague that would have been with us here, but he passed away last year, and you know, he did many of these webinars with you guys, of course, and he was, you know, on the original team that started this project, and we miss him dearly. But that's our Ron Rosenblum.
Absolutely.
So you can see him in all his glory. So he's been on my mind for, you know, as I was prepping for this, and I actually think of him quite often. There's always a Ron joke behind every corner somewhere.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
He truly is, and I think that's what endeared us all to Clear-Com too, is that Ram represented what the company's philosophy, I believe, is at the heart, which is it's all about the user. It's all about implementing this equipment on site, and you know, Ram was unvarnished, you know, and we certainly appreciated that about him. But that, to your point, this is our industry. It is so unique. I don't think you'll talk to somebody in the construction business or in other industries where we have connection like we do. And
No.
and you know, thanks for putting your email up there, guys. That's we do appreciate that connection point back to there. You may hear from us more than you care to, but it's really important and vital to be able to do that. And thanks for that shout out there. We all hope that we make an impact on the industry like Ram does at the end of the day. So.
And, you know, I mean, I think definitely one of the reasons why we are in this business, I mean, it's curiosity and, you know, interest in doing new things all the time and whatever, but taking the challenge, right? You know, pulling it through, the accomplishment of seeing something getting done, but also having fun. And Ram represented all of that.
He sure did. And we're going to let Pete carry that torch now.
I can never stand up to Ram.
Nobody ever will.
No.
And that's a great thing. But we'll all take the best of Ram and all of us, and make every day a great day. So thank you again, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
All right. Looking forward to the next thing.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Bye.